How to do a research project. Module 6, The Anatomy of a Research Paper. We are currently on Module 6, The Anatomy of a Research Paper. The learning objective for this module is to describe the characteristics of an effective research paper. Most physicians will never do a research study after residency. However, every physician will repeatedly be a consumer of the literature. The purpose of this module will be to review the structure of a research paper and review the elements that one should look out for in each part of a research paper as one digests the contents. The anatomy of a research paper consists of the following in order: the title, the author list, the abstract, the body, the introduction, the methods, the results, the discussion or conclusion, and the references. First, when looking at a research paper, ask yourself, is the title clear? Most readers only look at the title and abstract of a paper. If the title is unclear, a reader may not even bother to continue. This example illustrates the title requirements from two journals. The first journal, the Green Journal, requires that manuscript titles contain no more than a total of 100 characters counting letters and spaces, are not to be declarative or pose a question, and do not use abbreviations or commercial names. The second journal, the Journal of General Internal Medicine, requires that manuscript titles be fewer than 18 words. Next, for the author list, readers should be aware of whether the authors are from industry. In the provided example, several of the authors are listed as employed by Novo Nordisk. Paying attention to the fact that the authors are from industry will likely make the reader view the results of the paper in a slightly different light, compared to not realizing that the paper was authored by industry. A recently updated Cochrane review by Lund et al. Concluded that industry-sponsored research is biased. Taken from the author's conclusions section of their study, Lund et al. Write that sponsorship of drug and device studies by the manufacturing company leads to more favorable results and conclusions than sponsorship by other sources. Our analyses suggest the existence of an industry bias that cannot be explained by standard risk of bias assessments. Next, the abstract is frequently the only component people read. A good abstract is self-sufficient and can stand on its own. If one reads an abstract and cannot get a good sense of the article, or feels like one is missing something, then it is not a good abstract. Taken from Andrade's How to Write a Good Abstract for a Scientific Paper or Conference Presentation, Andrade writes, quote, "The abstract of a paper is the only part of the paper that is published in conference proceedings. The abstract is the only part of the paper that a potential referee sees when he is invited by an editor to review a manuscript. The abstract is the only part of the paper that readers see when they search through electronic databases such as PubMed. Finally, most readers will acknowledge with a chuckle that when they leaf through the hard copy of a journal, they look at only the titles of the contained papers. If a title interests them, they glance through the abstract of that paper." For a great review of the importance of an abstract, see Al Space's Writing for Publication 101, Why the Abstract is So Important. Additionally, in a 2007 Cochrane review of 79 reports that analyzed a total of 29,729 abstracts presented at scientific meetings, the weighted mean abstract to full publication rate was 44.5%. Finally, Scherer, Dickinson, and Langenberg's paper, Full Publication Results Initially Presented in Abstracts, provides another good resource on abstracts. Additionally, publication rates vary among medical specialties following abstract presentations at scientific meetings, ranging from 34% to 59%. See sources Bandari et al., Klassen et al., and Shelmerdine et al. For additional resources about the importance of abstracts. Next in the research paper is the introduction. The most important part of the introduction is the last few sentences. Look at whether the objectives and aims of the study are clearly stated. If the aims and objectives are not clearly stated, then it is hard to judge the adequacy of the methods. Taken from the last sentence of a study by Berlowitz and Capri et al., the authors write, quote, "Using patient-reported outcomes from the trial, we sought to address 3 questions. First, did patients randomly assigned to intensive blood pressure control perceive their health status, as measured by patient-reported outcomes of physical and mental health, differently from patients randomly assigned to standard treatment? Second, did older patients who had hypertension as well as lower physical and cognitive function have different patient-reported outcomes depending on whether they were receiving intensive or standard antihypertensive treatment? Third, because adverse effects from medications may lead to poor adherence to treatment, Did intensive treatment affect patient-reported adherence to treatment? End quote. Here, the last few sentences clearly state the objectives of the study for the reader. Next is the methods section. Sometimes this section can be very technical, but in an ideal sense, the methods should be clear enough that you can completely replicate the entire study by reviewing the methods section. Some of the key components to look for in the methods section are 1. The study design. 2. The study population. 3. The exclusion criteria. 4. The inclusion criteria. 5. The primary outcome variable. 6. The primary exposure variable. And 7. Statistical power. A final key component of the methods section to look for is 8. If the study was an industry-associated study. If it was an industry-associated study, look for who actually conducted the study. Was it the pharma or biotech company who actually did the study, or was it the other authors who did it using funding from the industry? Look at the paper by Marceau and Maguire et al. Taken from their study entitled Efficacy and Safety of Delgludec versus Glargine in Type 2 Diabetes, we see the notation on page 724, quote, "The trial was funded and conducted by Novo Nordisk," end quote. If industry conducted the study, then did the authors have full access to the data? This is critical to look for. Marceau and Maguire et al. Additionally write, quote, "The steering committee, which was composed of the authors, participated in designing the trial, analyzing the data, editing an earlier version of the manuscript, and making the decision to submit the manuscript for publication. Medical writing and editorial support were funded by the sponsor. The authors had full access to all the trial data and vouched for the completeness and integrity of the data and for the fidelity of the trial to the protocol," end quote. Because the authors had full access to the data, their study can be seen as more reputable than one in which the authors did not have full access to the data. Further examples from Marceau and Maguire et al. Describe the study design and study population. For the study design, the authors describe it thusly, quote, "The trial was a treat-to-target, randomized, double-blind, active comparator-controlled cardiovascular outcomes trial that was conducted at 438 sites in 20 countries," end quote. For the study design, they write that, quote, "Patients with type 2 diabetes who were at high risk for cardiovascular events were randomly assigned in a 1-to-1 ratio to receive either Delgludec or Glargine, both in identical 10 milliliter vials containing 100 U per milliliter, with each drug added to standard care and administered once between dinner and bedtime," end quote. As previously discussed in regard to the methods section of a research paper, the authors clearly describe their methodology for the reader, making the methods section an essential part of the research paper. Next in the research paper is the results section. The results section in a research paper includes the following characteristics. Both the text in the tables and the flow of the results section should match the aims of the study. Specifically, the aims of the study as laid out in the introduction should guide the methods section, and the methods section should then flow into the results section. Additionally, the table should not be too busy and should not be a complete replication of text in the results section. Additional characteristics of the results section are that tables should be completely self-sufficient and able to be understood even if one has never read the paper, and the author's opinion of the results should not be in the results section. Only objective findings should be presented in the results section. Next in the research paper is the discussion section. The main issue to watch for in the discussion is whether the authors overstate their case. Can the reader really draw the conclusions that the authors are drawing based on their objective results? A second key issue to pay attention to is the generalizability of the study. Can the conclusions be extended to people outside the study? Within the discussion section, the limitations section is the most important part of the discussion section. If one reads anything, this is the part to read. This is where one gets information that will help decide how much one can trust the results of the study. All research has limitations, but the key is how significant those limitations are in reducing generalizability or validity of the study. Next, the conclusion is the final section of the body of text of the research paper. The conclusion should tie directly back into the primary aim or objective of the study, as stated at the end of the introduction. Following the body of the text of the research paper are the collected references cited throughout the research paper. It goes without saying that each reference should be cited in such a manner that the reader can find that article or book without difficulty. If an author makes a declarative statement and cites a paper to support his or her point, the reader can then check the author by looking at that reference. Overall, these are the different aspects of a research paper. By recognizing the characteristics of each section, the reader can more easily extract information from the text to quickly and efficiently understand and evaluate a research paper and its findings. Understanding the anatomy of a research paper is key to understanding the research paper itself. This module is the final module in the course How to Do a Research Project. To review, this course covered the major steps in conducting a research project from start to finish, which included coming up with an idea, the research proposal, submission to the IRB, collecting data, analyzing data, and preparing the manuscript. For more information and resources on conducting a research project, please visit the references contained in the References module at the end of this course. We hope you have enjoyed How to Do a Research Project and wish you the best in your research endeavors.